Everyone, welcome to today's episode of Sihasin Hour. Today we are continuing to look at climate change impacts, and we're going to be very specific today looking at Navajo Nation. We are joined by Dr. Karletta Cheap. She's an associate professor and extension specialist, environmental science director, and works in the Indigenous Resilience Center at the University of Arizona. So we're very happy to have Dr. Cheap here with us today. We're also joined by Sadie Lister. She's the outreach coordinator for Indian Nations Conservation Alliance. And we're going to be focusing mostly on water today. We were supposed to be joined by Dr. Margaret Redsteer as well to talk about soil impacts. Unfortunately, Dr. Redsteer is unable to join us today, but she will be joining us later in the month in our final session of Sihasin Hour covering climate change impacts. So many of you know me, She'e Ethel Branchian Chef, Nipatotni Nishle, Nakai Bashichin, Sitnajani Dashache, Do Nakai Dashanala, Sezizi Denasha, and I am speaking to you from Kintane. And I'll pass things over to Dr. Cheap to introduce herself.
Ethel, and to the Yeha Hopi Solidarity Organization for having me here today. Sheya Adona and Shinigeya Toraji Nishleto Tohana Bashishin as a Sane Dashiche do Yaitane Tachine Dashanale Akot I Sanishle Ado Ziljiba de Yasinasha Ahead.
Great, wonderful. Sadie, could you introduce yourself as well?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sadie Lister. I'm with the Indian Nations Conservation Alliance, and we'll be talking with you after Karletta. And thank you for inviting me.
Great, we're so happy to have you with us, Sadie. Okay, wonderful. Well, we'll go ahead and get started with Dr. Cheap. I know you have some slides, Dr. Cheap, and we're really looking forward to your presentation. Excited about all of the work that you're doing at the University of Arizona. So hopefully some of that is covered in this presentation.
Great. Yeah, Ethel, for having me here. And today I wanted to talk about climate change impacts to tribal waters. And this is an area I've been working on for almost 20 years now, because it's really a pressing topic to our world today. To us Native Americans, water is sacred, and we view the water in all different connecting forms. It's part of our identity. It is important to our culture and our ceremonies. And the way we view water is important and very different from the non-Indigenous perspective, where water is often seen in a utilitarian way, such that water is seen as a commodity. And so that is important when we talk about climate change, to tribal nations to have that considered and be at the forefront. Climate change is going to change and is changing and altering the hydrologic system in terms of when and where water occurs and the quality of that water. And these changes in the timing and quality of water will also impact and is impacting the ecology and the species that depend on these water resources. And so these are species that are important to many tribal nations' livelihoods. And so that's another way that it's directly impacting tribal communities. So what is climate change and how is it occurring? So we'll explain the greenhouse effect which is basically the ozone layer, which allows moderates the heating and cooling of the world. However, because of anthropogenic pollution, such as fossil fuel burning, it has contributed to different greenhouse gases in the atmosphere that are creating trapping of the heat from the solar irradiation. And so when the solar energy comes in, these greenhouse gases, when it is reflected, trap more of the heat from the solar energy and reflects it back to the earth. So that's what is increasing from this greenhouse effect. There are many tribes across the United States, and when I began working on this, it began with working with one tribe in Nevada called the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe, and then led into being part of the intergovernmental panel on climate change, the report for the Southwest. And actually, I worked with Dr. Margaret Hiza Red Steer on that chapter. And at that time, over 10 years ago, when we wrote a chapter, it was the first time that there was a tribes chapter in the Southwest Climate Report. And when we began writing this chapter, there was very little information about the unique impacts to tribal communities. And so through a group called Rising Voices, which I encourage you to join if you're not part of, it's a collective group of individuals who are interested in elevating the impacts of climate change on Indigenous communities. And so through this collective, we began to collaborate and begin to compile data and information regarding impacts of climate change on tribal communities. So the first one I joined was looking at how tribal waters was to be impacted. And at first it's a very daunting task to try to write a report that could contribute to the IPCC report, mainly because tribes are very diverse, very unique. They are in urban and rural places, large and small, land bases, population, and different livelihoods. So in order to do this, we addressed and looked at the impacts across the different regions, looking at Alaska, the Pacific Northwest, Southwest, the Northeast, and the Southeast. And in that way, we could at least group and be able to provide some valuable information. So this paper is Karletta et al. 2013, and you can find it easily in open access on Google Scholar. So what happens with climate change is that as carbon dioxide is increasing, it is correlated with the increase in temperature around the world. And this graph shows that correlation. And so a lot of data has been gathered across the world that show the same trend. So from the late 1800s, you see that the blue bars indicate times when the temperature was below the global average. But as you see, starting in the industrial period of the 1930s, you start to see this fluctuation between hot and cold. And then in the 1980s, it's basically been all in the red. And not only that it's been above the global mean temperature, but also that it's rapidly increasing. So currently, based on all the projections that have been made, we're at the worst case scenario for those projections that have been made over the last several decades. So I don't want to specifically focus in on the Southwest and then on the Navajo Nation. And for the Southwest, there are over 170 tribes with small and large lands in urban and rural settings with diverse ecosystems and climatic regions. We found that climate change is rapidly impacting tribal communities, and some examples is loss of water. Loss of water, decreases in soil moisture have led to increasing sand dunes, and which are inundating homes, increases in wind erosion. And Dr. Hisa Redster actually does her research looking at the rate of which these sand dunes migrate. And in the Wallapai Nation and many other nations, because of the decrease in water, that has had huge impacts to loss of livestock, and also having to prematurely sell livestock. In tribes that live in forested areas, such as the White Mountain Apache tribe, increases in high crown fires that are intense and of large magnitudes have increased. Rapid snowmelt and earlier snowmelt of snow in the mountain ranges has increased in flooding. For example, in the Havasupai tribe, those flooding has really impacted the economies of the Havasupai tribe. And then here on the Navajo Nation, we have seen impacts to alluvial aquifers, which are the first to be impacted. So alluvial aquifers are shallow groundwaters that are exposed to the atmosphere. And the temperature, air temperature impacts that more directly, and has resulted in decreases in those shallow groundwaters, and basically making them the water table go down. So on the Navajo Nation, there has been monitoring of snow and rain, and with the help of David Delmar and Mike Crimmins, all of this is actually in the Navajo language, so we can share that to the group after this conversation. But again, what you see from the early 1900s is this green is showing above snow and rain average, brown is below that precipitation. And you can see that from the 1900s, there's a lot of, fluctuation between above and below. But as we get into the 1950s, there's more brown bars than green bars. And in the 1980s, I remember when I was growing up, a lot of snow on Black Mesa. And then suddenly, now again, huge brown bars saying that we have much less precipitation to the present time. Again, the temperature on the Navajo Nation shows the same trend, where in the early 1900s, you see a lot of blue and cooler than average temperatures. And then again, during the 1940s, we start to see this fluctuation. And then in the present day, from the 1990s, a lot of red bars showing that the average temperature on the Navajo Nation is also above average for the century. So in our work in looking at the impacts of climate change on tribal communities, we wanted to demonstrate those unique impacts by sharing the 5 factors set within this medicine wheel to show what are those impacts that are different from non-tribal communities. So looking at this factors, we have socioeconomic, because tribes have very different socioeconomic characteristics. Political, they are sovereign nations that are important to consider for like water rights, infrastructure. Many tribes don't have the same type of water infrastructure or any kind of other infrastructure that other communities may have. They may be deteriorating or poorly maintained. There's a huge dependence on ecosystem services and land use from these riparian corridors along the water sources. And then spirituality and culture is that these places and the water sources are connected to our identity. Now I want to talk about what I've been involved in with climate adaptation efforts. Back in 2014, there was a report that was created to talk about what climate change impacts are on tribal communities. And then more recently, we have a report on a workshop that was done, and I just want to share a little bit of that, but these are resources you can find also online. We have found that very few tribes are writing climate adaptation plans. And so we have done some work on what are these adaptation plans. And this is a paper that's also online showing some examples about how tribes are writing climate adaptation plans. They're all very different. Some have focused it on like an energy plan. Some have focused it on their own cultural values and livelihoods. And so I encourage you to go to that resource as well. So on the Navajo Nation, these are some milestones that have occurred back in 2018. 2011, there was an energy adaptation framework developed. There were several Navajo ag conferences that were focused on climate change. There was some work on priority species from the forests, Navajo forestry, a vulnerability assessment that was developed, and then many workshops from DNR since 2014. And I stopped there because I have since moved on to different areas of work. So I don't have the latest information about what the Navajo Nation has been doing as of late. But I want to share one specific example about a workshop that we held where we had different Navajo representatives from the departments, as well as grassroots, and also the chapter levels. So in terms of talking about adaptation on the Navajo Nation, one of the major impacts affecting the adaptation that the people stated in that workshop in 2014 is water hauling, human health, dust storms, lack of forage, and invasive species. And we also looked at the cascading impacts of those particular climate change impacts on the Navajo Nation that are very complex. So this is a really complex diagram showing those specific climate change impacts on the Navajo Nation. And the workshop participants talked about those impacts, including, for example, decreases in farming, heat waves, invasive species, increase in feral animals, and so forth. But all of these particular impacts also have impacts on the people that can be financial burden, economic depression, decreases in different species that are of importance, like eagles, impacts on the health of the elders, respiratory health impacts, and so forth. But in our conversations, water was one of the main topics that was highlighted, and livestock. So this is just a word diagram of what was said, and the bigger the word, the more times people in that workshop said that word. So you can see water is really big, livestock, grazing, community management, and education. So some adaptation strategies that the people said, for example, in water hauling was that water rights should be settled. There should be drought plans for ranchers. For human health, we talked about partnering with Navajo Nation Emergency Response to establish safe zones for vulnerable community members to find reprieve from heat waves. In terms of dust storms, again, talking about plans and education, like educating grazing officials on soil science. And the lack of forage, we talked a lot about invasive species, looking at quality over quantity for livestock. And then specifically for invasive species, policies for weed-free alfalfa. We talked about hay that was of low quality that was being sold on the Navajo Nation that actually may have be contributing to increases in invasive species. And then integrated weed management plan, and then climate change education and awareness. So I want to share this toolkit that's available to everyone. It's called toolkit.climate.gov at Tribal. And there's training resources, planning, information about traditional ecological knowledge, youth engagement, and so forth. So this is a nice website to go to for further information. I also work to translate climate change because in my outreach, it was needed to have these terms translated. So for climate change, it be is climate change. We also translated other words like drought and so forth. So this is available as well to the audience. But more recently, I've been focused on mitigate adaptation resilience to different perturbations, including climate change, through the development of off-grid technologies for producing drinking water and growing foods. So my team, the Indigenous Food, Energy, Water Security Sovereignty Program with my students are doing work around this in partnership with the Net College and Six World Solutions. So for example, we co-designed this mobile solar nanofiltration water unit that sits on a trailer bed. And this provides water for up to 5 families, and it's mobile. So one can get water from a non-potable source locally and be able to treat it to water quality standards and be stored in this finished water tank. The solar panels are on top. We've been training tribal college students how to maintain and operate these systems. And this is currently at the land grant office. So in May of 2020, we were invited by the Navajo Nation Council to think about how we can downscale these units for household units during the pandemic because of lack of access to the central water infrastructure. So we've been working with Six Rural Solutions, Janine Yazzie and Kern Collymore, training their technicians, going into co-design to see how we can place these different parts on a smaller frame, and where we can place batteries and the solar controls. And so we're still going through that iterative process. And we were invited to join the Navajo Nation Water Access Coordination Group, which is a collaborative group of individuals, entities that are working on water to bring our resources together to try to increase water security. And through this work, we began to ask for approval from the Navajo IRB so that we can do some focus groups and surveys. And after 1 year, we're able to get enough resolutions to be able to get that approval. What we want to do is ask people what they think about these water technologies. Is it technology that they would accept? What are their concerns about the quality of food, energy, and water? And do these systems, would do they think that these systems would be helpful in increasing access to food, energy, and water. So over the past this year, we've been working with Kern, Collymore, and Janine Yazzie, piloting these systems in four communities with families that they work with. So I want to conclude by talking about what we may think about Indigenous resilience, because resilience is often framed from the Western scientific view, stemming from C.S. Holling, who was a Canadian ecologist that did some mathematical modeling to think about how systems recover and the state to which they come back to. But there's not a lot of research and information about Indigenous resilience, but I found this really neat paper that I recommend to the audience to read that was just published this last year on Indigenous resilience in Australia. I really like their definition, which is the ability to have a connection and belonging to one's land, family, and culture, therefore an identity, allowing pain and suffering caused from adversities to heal, having a dreaming where the past is brought to the present and the present is brought to the future. A strong spirit that confronts and conquers racism and oppression, strengthening the spirit and the ability is not just to survive, but to thrive in today's dominant culture. So I've been thinking about how that can be incorporated into my work. And so I've modified the framework that I showed you initially to make that connection between household, community, and tribal nation. And so what we will do with our work is ask the people what they think the resilience is, what is the metrics that can be monitored to understand the resilience and how we can increase the resilience of tribal nations. So in conclusion, tribes have an urgent need to prepare for or respond to climate change that considers culture. There are many uncertainties that exist, specifically in the model projections. There's a lack of community-specific climate and water data, and all of that contributes to uncertainty. So we have to consider that. Adaptation is most effective if it's integrated to an existing plan rather than being a standalone plan. For tribes who often have been left out of the discussion, it's important that that adaptation be participatory and transparent. And I want to thank everyone for having me here today. And I want to say that the University of Arizona does have a new center called the Indigenous Resilience Center. And we will be bringing new faculty on in different areas related to tribal environment. And we hope to do more work with many more tribes on this issue of resilience and contributing to partnerships with tribes and the resilience of tribal communities. Yeah.
You're doing wonderful. Yeah, Karletta, Dr. Chief. That was a really interesting presentation. There's so much information in there. So thank you for sharing that and for providing all the links that you provided. And we'll make sure to add a bunch of those to the chat on Facebook so folks can just access them quickly. But yeah, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. And it's very informative. I have lots of questions. We have some questions from the viewers as well. But let's go ahead and move on to Sadie's presentation, and then we'll switch to Q&A at the end. Sadie, I know you also have a PowerPoint presentation, so if you want to get that up.
Yes.
Looking forward to your presentation.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for joining us during this Sihasin hour. I put this presentation together thinking of myself as being a mother, and then us being as family members, to our children. So my slide is going to be about climate change, and Karletta covered quite a bit, but through surfing the internet, thank God for that, I was able to come upon some information, and climate change is long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns since 1800s. I think that's when it began, where human activities have been causing the climate change to begin, primarily using fossil fuels, burning fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas that produces heat trapping gases. So currently the world is warming 100 times faster than it was previously, of course, because we are burning a lot of coal. However, what it, like Karletta indicated, it's being trapped and causing us to have hotter temperatures. And I guess if you look at it, it's like a 10.5 thick blanket that's covering, if you have a lot of quilts during the wintertime, it's very warm. I guess you could look at it in that way, but it's surrounding the earth and it's warming our planet. Because of the pollution that's harming our environment, right now it's also hurting our people. And then also we see how it's affecting even the regions in our, not only in our country, but all over the world. We are having a lot of wildfires. The wildfires cause a lot of smoke. We have poisonous gases in the air. We're having a lot of historic droughts here in the Southwest, and affecting our food supply. And then even in the southern areas, their oceans are getting warmer, creating more, horrendous hurricanes that are affecting people, destroying their homes. And then even lives are being affected by this climate change. So, a question that's always out there is, is it too late to prevent, the worst case scenarios? How can we stop polluting? How can we begin to move forward and, change our ways of life? There's a lot of renewable energy sources that we can encounter. Technology is on our side. How do we change these things? So, that's something that we need to look at. And here on Navajo Nation, we have the power as parents, as uncles, mothers, brothers and sisters. We have that influence, to teach our children, to protect our children's futures. Our leaders, they played this role, as well as our communities. So, taking action, we look at, how we do things. I indicated mere characteristics. Our children learn from the things that we do as parents. So, fuel usage, we burn fuel by going to town, and, that's a big factor. We're just coming home from Winslow to where I reside. My mom has a habit of counting vehicles, and by the time we get to a certain area, she'll say, like just recently, since we left Winslow to here to Standing Horse, 40 vehicles have met us. Where are these people going? Are they going home? Are they heading into town to run an errand? What was their purpose? And if you think about that, even our shopping, we have to take into consideration, are we shopping to thinking about climate change? Are we buying in quantity so we don't have to continuously drive to town? Are we buying things that we can reuse, or even looking at the products that we buy? We're getting a lot of grocery bags, and getting our groceries, taking it out into our vehicles, and then those sometimes we have a tendency to litter. People will just throw them away and they'll be flying about, affecting our livestock. They'll be chewing on these things. What about disposing our trash, littering, polluting? I see people, roll down their windows and throw their trash out the window. Or either are we at home, setting up like trash bins to save our aluminum cans or tin cans, putting cardboard boxes in one place. What are we doing? Burning our trash. Those are things that we don't really consider, in this life, that we have our appliances. We have everything plugged in, we're using electricity. Are we changing that to, maybe like electric range stoves? I myself prefer a gas stove, but that's polluting our, it's helping the climate change. Are we conserving when we are using electricity? Because a lot of our electricity is used by using coal to, get electricity to our homes. How can we prevent using a lot of electricity? Having our appliances plugged in continuously, our phone, chargers are plugged in all the time. Where are we making changes to, help our climate change? When we purchase vehicles, right now the electric cars are becoming more affordable. Are we changing to these things to make a difference here? And then even when we go and thinking about transportation, bringing our foods, we're constantly, at Walmart buying all these things that we need. Where are these trucks coming from? How far do they travel? How much gas do they burn? Those are things that we don't really consider. And gardening, how many of us are gardening? We could prevent our, by gardening, we could prevent these trips to town, and limiting how we travel at times. And then, I myself, I go to town and, we might go to Walmart and then go Safeway and wherever, but do we actually go there to maybe identify a route so that we're not running back and forth in town, just because we're forgetting things, write down while you're running your errands so that you can just make one stop and not be burning, your gas. Or when we make like stops for a period of time, do we leave our vehicles running, just so we can run in the store and take care of something that's going to take maybe 5 minutes and then come back out, in that time we could turn off our vehicles. These are things that I guess, our children look at and think, oh, it's okay, that, my mother's doing it or my father's doing it. We're teaching our kids. So I think this is a really good time to change that mentality and be able to teach our children the right way. How do we make things better? And those are thoughts that came to my mind when I was asked to do this presentation. How can we make these changes? So, sharing facts, concerns, and solutions. We many of us probably attend chapter meetings, in that time, talk about these things. What are, there's a lot of facts out there that can be shared, and what are the concerns that can be expressed? We have a lot of illegal dumping out there. We have a lot of people who, make, roads here and there that are not necessary. What are solutions that we can come up with? Social media is another good place to share information. What can we get out there to express, the concerns that we have, and, having people to think about these things. Community events. That's another place where we can talk about things. A good way right now coming up, we have Earth Day coming up. How many people are going to be involved out there and, picking up trash? That's an eye opener to see what kind of things are being tossed along the highway when we go pick up trash. Family gatherings, that's also another good place to go and express, concerns, and having family get together to, make changes. Maybe you could be the person who's going to organize an event, hey, let's go out and, do some erosion control, or let's go out and, make changes in this area or that area, and, those are good times, good times to express, concerns that you have in reference to climate change. A lot of people think it's just a myth, but it's not. At our dinner table, that's a really good time. We might have attended a chapter meeting, and perhaps you had talked about programs that were out there, and you come back to the dinner table. That's a good time to tell everybody what was talked about. I know during community events, I do a lot of outreach, and I get the same old people, coming to our meetings, and after a while, you don't get anybody new. But one thing that my dad always told me was, don't worry about it. If you get 2 people there, don't worry, because when they come back at home and you have elders there that didn't go to the meeting, they'll ask, what was talked about. That's when you're going to go and tell about, what was talked about at the chapter meeting or whatever the event was. And, grandma and grandpa, they like to visit. And when they have a visitor, they'll say that, oh, this was talked about at the chapter meeting. Do you know anything about this? So it's a way to start conversation. So that's, one of the things that we could, work on. Elections coming up for Navajo Nation, ask our leaders about their plans on how they're going to stop polluters, how are they going to address illegal trash dumping, or, we have a lot of people who, think that they're saving themselves money by, oil changing at home, but they don't have proper disposals. Instead they go down to the wash and just, take their oil and, pour it out down there. That's affecting our water, in those areas. How maybe our leaders, how will they build to bring clean economy with jobs on Navajo? Those are things that they could think about, that we could ask our leaders about. What are their thoughts about that? Keeping fossil fuels in the ground, stop digging coal. Those are a lot of things that are big issues, not only here on Navajo, but all over the place. There's a lot of things that you can add to this. I'm sure your mind is already running, thinking, oh gosh, this is all these things that we can talk about, that will, start. But these are just a few points that I thought would be really good to share with you. And 30 minutes, I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be really quick. But these are just things that I thought would be really good to think about, coming from a home. We as parents, as mothers, we're the ones that are around the home and teaching our children, so I think it's really important, the topic that you shared with me, and to cover, and it's things that we all need to think about, as parents. How are we going to teach our kids? We need to mold them to where they're conscious about, what climate change is about, and it's an important topic. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sadie. I
Mhm.
can see why you're the outreach coordinator. This is all really great information for families to receive. And I love that you kind of focused on, what can we do at an individual level to make a difference? And sometimes it seems like climate change is this huge, overwhelming thing. And sort of, especially right now, it feels like we're on this irreversible course. But I loved how you kind of tied in all the many things that you can do as an individual or as a family and a community to ensure a safer, healthier environment, and then also have an impact on climate change. So thank you for adding that wonderful perspective. I think it was very complimentary to a lot of the data that Karletta was sharing.
Right.
Yeah, those graphs were really interesting, showing the temperatures and the precipitation. I just remember when I was growing up, my family has been grazing for generations, and my mom would always say, oh, the grass used to be up to my stirrup on my horse when she would go out herding sheep. And then when I was out herding, she was like, well, the grass is not to my stirrups. And she would say, like, she couldn't see over the grass. And I was always really conscious. I mean, I was always on the land, observing those things, and then Now I look at the land and I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm saying the same things my mom was saying. Like there's less rain, there's less snow, the grass is not as high, the grass life is changing. We used to have really great grazing grass, but now it's a lot of the snakeweed, stuff the sheep and the horses can't eat. But looking at the graph, like really noticing that in the 90s, especially, like for me, when I was growing up doing these activities, things were okay. But now, like since the 90s, things have been really, really different and problematic, especially the absence of those large snowstorms during the winter. And seeing those changes in the land. Just recently, I was driving from Shiprock to Window Rock. It was last weekend, and I had never seen this before, where there were just like billows of sand blowing across 491, which I'm from Alluvial, so I'm used to seeing walls of dirt moving through in the spring, unfortunately, but I had never seen that on that corridor. And I, when the Gold King mine spill happened, I was traveling that route pretty regularly. So even just in a period of 4 years, there's been some pretty significant change in some regions on Navajo Nation. But anyway, those are just some thoughts and reflections I had on your presentations. And we did receive a few questions in the chat during your presentation. And so one of them is a question on what do you guys recommend for a heating source during the winter months for our people? I think that's such a good question, because apparently we've been in a heating crisis the last couple of years. There's less access to heating supplies. Some of our relief has been providing heating supplies. There are other relief groups that are doing that. With the shutdown of the coal mines, there is less access to heating supplies. Not that that was a great source. There's certainly health impacts from that. But for families that want to have less of a carbon footprint, what are some recommendations for things that folks could do now?
That's a great question. I could start. I think the real key to this question is ensuring energy efficient homes. And, I know like for some of my relatives, they have, a lot of heat escaping through the windows. Just looking at other energy efficient ways so that we all have to burn. We all need heat, and it burns some sort of fuel, and or if solar is an option, that's definitely less of a carbon footprint. But solar is still very expensive for many of our relatives. So I think, looking at your home to try to make it more energy efficient. There is a program with the USDA rural, a program where there are funds for weatherization of homes. So look into that, but just looking at your home and trying to find ways to reduce the energy loss in the home.
That's a great suggestion. And there's actually an organization that's working on energy efficiency in homes, Red Feather Development Company. So if folks want to improve the weatherization of their homes, you can reach out to them, and they'll help provide things like a mini split or replace older stoves with more fuel efficient stoves, and I think they do some level of actual weatherization, and that's actually the third phase of work that our organization wants to move into, because we want to not only make our communities pandemic proof, but also climate change resilience, because these are two existential threats that our people are facing during this time. And we want to make sure that our people are equipped with what they need to survive the next quarter century. I mean, well into the future. And I totally get what you're saying, Karletta, but so many of our families, like my mom lives in a rock house that my grandpa built with rocks from a local stone quarry. And, one of the things, like, she's replaced her windows, but there's like cracks in the concrete now. And, like trying to weatherproof some of these homes, I mean, it's a substantial undertaking. But there are some funds available right now for folks who live on Navajo and Hopi. They're county-based funds, and Red Feather has the information on it. But you can develop a list of things to weatherize your home. It doesn't just have to be weatherization; it's any kind of home improvements, and you're able to receive up to $500. So keep that in mind. So folks who are listening and want to undertake that weatherization, I recommend that you reach out to Red Feather and gain access to those funds. I think it's very simple. You just develop your list of things that you need, and then you work with Red Feather to receive those funds to pursue that work. So Sadie, did you want to weigh in on this question as well?
I guess other resources you could use is your communities, your chapters. They also have funding there to help folks who need to weatherize their homes. So that might be another place you can look to seek assistance for that.
Great. And then another question we received from the same listener, Miss Begay. She wanted to know if she wanted to purchase one of those filtration systems that you shared, Karletta, whether that's an option and how much that costs.
Okay, great question. Yeah, so we're working with Six World Solutions, headed by Janine Yazzie and Kern Collymore. Right now, we're really in the R&D phase for these systems, trying to optimize the parts and the placements and making sure that it works effectively in the homes and that it's user-friendly. We're going to be at Delcon chapter next week on April 2021st. If you want to come over and see us installing it at the chapter house, we'll be having a training on the 21st on the system and a focus group on what people think about the system. And one of the things that we have to do for these systems is that they're specific design to your water source. So for example, if you're in a place that has high uranium or high arsenic or other contaminants, we need to make sure that that system removes those different metals and metalloids. If you're in a place where you have freshwater source that doesn't have those types of metals, then you don't need that high membrane, the solar nanofiltration membrane. You might just need, primary coarser filters that, are $5 from the local store. And then you would just need like a UV disinfection to make sure you're getting rid of all the bacteria and other bugs that might be in there. So the system is really site specific, and that's what we're doing and working with Janine Yazzie and Kern Collymore by looking at these different areas around the Navajo Nation where people have different types of water sources to see how it works. And our students are making sure that they work effectively. So far, they're working great. And the idea is that these parts are common parts. You can go to Home Depot, buy them. And the membrane is probably, relatively speaking, the hardest to get, but you can get it on Amazon. And that membrane should last for at least 20 years. But the coarser filters, those would be like yearly $5 cost of taking those out, but it requires training, and we're not there at like mass production, but we want to see how we can make it available and reduce the cost of it. But the idea is an organization like Six Rural Solution or a Navajo entrepreneur that wants to make this into business so that they can employ technicians, they can mass produce it, provide local jobs, and provide it at a low cost to the families that live remotely, because many families will never be connected to essential infrastructure because they live very far and they're continuing to use water that may have other contaminants of concern, which will be a health impact in the long term of their life. So so that's the vision. We're not there yet. Right now, the unit is costing around $2,000, and that's mainly because of the labor. But we're trying to bring that down as low as we can, and looking at different types of materials, because right now it's made with a steel frame. And one of the suggestion was to use plastic frame. So we're just exploring options. We're working with Six Rural Solutions, the Net College, and just going through that brainstorming. But come over to Delcon chapter next week to check out the system and see to get more information on it.
Wow, that was a lot of information. I have so many thoughts just based on what you shared right now. I was going to ask how that filtration system worked, because, you know, I think it's like 11% of our livestock wells have uranium or arsenic in them. So, you know, like, so apparently that's accounted for, which is wonderful. And so do you guys, if somebody wants a filtration system, there's a team that goes out and tests the water supply for that particular home, or how does that work?
Yeah, so right now it's not available or readily for everybody. So Janine has selected 4 families that she worked with on relief efforts in regards to, you know, where they get their water. So we had to look at their water, test their water, look at what's in there, and then make sure that those contaminants of concern are being removed from the water at the end point. So some examples of the families that she's working with, these are families that, you know, literally have to walk to their water source. I mean, you know, I grew up without electricity or running water and hauling water. But, you know, I live on Black Mesa, and the water is, you know, it's a good quality water and it's close by, but some families don't have the transportation. They're carrying their water jugs in a wheelbarrow, you know, elders walking 3 miles to a non-potable livestock well that may have arsenic in it. So the idea is that we need to find a solution right now for people that live very, very remotely and have no means of going to the chapter house. Because there are people that don't have the means to go to the chapter house to haul water. You know, having a big cistern is not common for all people on the Navajo Nation. So so hopefully we'll get there soon with Six Rural Solutions to eventually have that readily available. But I think it's going to take a lot of effort, you know, from different people, like business, just to fund that and to get it going. And so I think more on that, and later on, hopefully we'll be able to have it available.
There's also funding through the Navajo Water Project for small community groups and small NGOs. We've tried applying for those funds because we want to address the water situation with respect to some of our constituents, but we're not eligible. But for the communities that you're talking about, like that would be a perfect opportunity for an ambitious young person to apply for that grant, buy a water truck with those funds and deliver the water to the community. So again, Navajo Water Project has these grants for these types of projects. I was actually thinking maybe my niece should do that for the families in our area, because the Navajo Nation contaminated our windmill, which was like a half mile from our house, when they were testing the drilling on the sea aquifer to run, to source the coal slurry to Mojave generating station. And so now like our nearest windmill is like 6 miles from our house. But with the drought conditions, all of the wells are dry in our area, all the windmills. And so now my family's having to drive to Western generating, Transwestern station to get their water. But I mean, our people are having to try, like, hunt for their water now. And people don't seem to care so much about livestock water sources. But yeah, anyway, that's Navajo Water Project. But the other thing I wanted to ask about, well, I'm just personally curious, like what does an alluvial stream look like? I've heard Nicole Horsfordter talk about those, like, memories of being on Black Mesa and like early in the morning going out and seeing the alluvial streams. And so it just always seems so amazing, like almost magical. Do those streams actually, like, what does it look like? I mean, now they're not flowing, sadly, but what does an alluvial stream look like?
So an alluvial stream is where basically where the groundwater intersects with the top of the land. So the topography comes down and intersects with the water table. So that groundwater is actually feeding into the surface water. So the surface water is hydrologically connected to the groundwater. But with drought and excessive extraction of groundwater, that groundwater table will get so low that it will never intersect with the surface of the land. So that's where you stop seeing those alluvial streams.
So it's not quite a spring, but it kind of operates like one, maybe?
Yeah, it's like a spring, same concept in theory, but with the stream, it's like filling the entire, basically the bed of that stream is controlling the volume. So the water's like going in there and it's basically like a basin for the groundwater. Whereas a spring, it's like one point of where the water's flowing out. So it's like a concentrated point. Whereas a stream, it's a long little natural basin of where the groundwater's basically being a reservoir. And it's, on top of, it's the groundwater that's come out on top of the surface.
That sounds amazing. And I know we're pretty much at time, but I did want to ask 2 questions. One is there a sustainability plan for the Navajo Nation? When you mentioned the sustainability plan and the need for the adaptation plan to work together, kind of made me curious about that. And then the other question is, for young people who may be watching this, who are interested in a career that would allow them to have an impact on climate change or protect their community from the impacts of climate change, do you have recommendations for different paths they could pursue?
Okay, there is a climate change adaptation plan for the Navajo Nation that was written in 2010, and I'll put it in the chat. In terms of sustainability plan, I'm not aware of one. There may be one, but I'm not sure. But I think that there is a huge need for the Navajo Nation to really make an integrated climate adaptation plan. The Navajo Nation Water Resources does have a drought plan, so it's kind of a similar concept to think about climate change impacts. But I haven't seen one for energy, which is it's really important for that part of it too, but I am not aware of one for that.
And on that point about energy, we're very happy to announce that Wahala Johns will be joining us on Earth Day to talk about how the nation can make a clean energy transition. We are extremely excited about this. As many people know, Wahala is directing the Tribal Energy Office in DC, Department of Energy. So I didn't know if we'd be able to fit onto her busy calendar, but she's making time for us. So very exciting. But yeah, and then in terms of career opportunities, do you guys have any suggestions for our young people who are looking for a path that will make a difference in this area?
Yeah, we work with the tribal colleges, and I'm part of a new network called the Native Fuse Alliance, and we're trying to support students and professionals in their educational and career pathways towards sustainability in the food, energy, water nexus. And there are so many career opportunities within the Fuse nexus that can relate to food sovereignty, energy security, water security. And with the tribal college, we've been doing training every year. We're doing another one this coming June on training on these water and food technologies, developing curriculum. And I'll share that it's introduction to like solar, water and food, greenhouses. We'll also be doing a training on June 8th at the Shiprock Chapter House. If you want to come out and look at the greenhouses and the water technologies. Actually, it's June 7th at the Shiprock Chapter. But yeah, there's opportunities in environment and engineering, business. I mean, law. I mean, I think any area that you go into, like even education, there are ways that you can utilize that discipline towards increasing sustainability.
Great. Sadie, anything you want to add to that?
I guess coming from me, I would say, trying to mentor our children into these programs. We have a lot of people who have interests, just looking at the pandemic, we've had a lot of young people going out there to start gardens. I think that was sparking interest on, what the soil type is and, whether or not, their plants have grown and they think, well, this corn didn't grow. Why didn't it grow? So those are probably really good ways to mentor your children to begin an interest in how, things can impact, growth or even interest in how they can make changes. So I think, social media is another good way, you could get out there and, interest our youth. A lot of them are constantly on their phones, and that might be a good way to, get them interested in different things, natural resources. We need a lot of conservationists out there to help, with our producers. Right now, we have talked a lot about, livestock management. People, as many times as you're out there trying to voice these concerns, a lot of them don't seem to really think twice about it. But our young people, I think now, especially in these last 2 years, not being forced to stay home, hopefully has made an impact on, being secluded and like, what am I going to do? So hopefully, it brought them to be more outdoors, since we're not in the cities living, we're more on the reservation, and being able to do things outdoors and looking at things that as children, like for myself, we did a lot of sheep herding when we were kids, and we were out there on the range a lot, but our children are not doing that. So, perhaps some of us have had our children, out there, scouting, venturing, taking hikes and seeing things that, they'd never really realized was out there before. So I think just mentoring our students, our audience, and helping them to make good decisions is probably a good way to do it.
Great, wonderful. Well, thank you both so much. I was reading about the intergovernmental, what is it, panel on the thing that Karletta is on, the IPCC material about their most recent report. And it talked about how the role that governments play in stemming climate change. So even, going into government, that's kind of like what you guys are saying, like basically anything can make a difference with respect to climate change. So I hope some of our young people will go down that path. But I also want to give you guys, and I'm sorry for going over a little bit, but if you guys have any final remarks that you want to leave or final thoughts you want to leave our viewers with, we'd love to hear them.
Thank you. Yeah, I just really enjoyed this conversation, especially to hear Sadie's presentation as well, and having, just the different perspectives. I think a lot of what Sadie said is like real action, and we all need to do our part right now and to educate our family and, just reduce, reuse, recycle, the 3 R's, especially with our kids. And I really like what Sadie said about, mentoring and being an example to our children, because it's their world and we gotta help do our part to make that difference. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Sadie?
For me, I think just getting on, and I don't know how big of an audience we have, but I'm just glad to be able to share. And then, we all have a lot to bring to the table. Everybody, we have experiences that we've encountered. We have, things that we have done that, could be lessons to our children. Just continue to do the best we can. And then, we have a lot of issues. I didn't go too much into like rangeland and whatnot, but those are really eye-opening scenarios that we have. We've had some rain, but we've also had a lot of wind. But when we come to the summer times, I recall, being out there, just wishing so much for a little cloud to expand so that we can have rain. Walking home, in the hot sand, and wishing that, you would find rain. But when it did come, we got really good rain, as children. But now we're getting like bursts of rain. Why is this happening? And I think a lot of it, we have to just come back to think about, us using the land. We have producers out there who are not being mindful to, leaving grasslands, at a percentage, maybe leaving 50% there to, save for wildlife. These things are not being taken into consideration. When we do get rain, the ground is so hot, and that cool rain or the cool weather with the hot heat, they don't work together. So we just get a lot of wind and it just gets blown away. But should we really focus on getting our forage back by limiting the numbers of our livestock? Perhaps then, our ground will be cooler so that it works together with the rain and we'll be able to get our forage back, and having forage, it really makes a difference on holding the water. You're able to get your spring water back. It recharges those systems. And, these are things that we should really, be thinking about and making a difference. There's families out there who have really done a lot of reduction because of, the forage that we have, but there's others who are, negligent and just want to continue to leave their livestock out there. they look poor, but to them, you know, it's just like, you know, it's going to be okay. We're not going to deal with too much. A couple of years ago, you know, we got a lot of weeds out there, and, you know, several of our livestock, you know, died because of it, you know. And right now, I think these earthen dams, they're starting to dry up, and, you know, it's beginning to get muddy. So, you know, think about those things. We might have to just, you know, what we have done in the past is, you know, fenced in our earthen dams so we don't lose cattle in there, because, you know, if they die in there and you don't have the manpower to pull them, you know, they're polluting the water that other animals are there to drink. So there's a lot of things that we need to take into consideration as land users, you know, just, I guess, be out there to, you know, really think about our youth and our children, and, you know, implement, you know, new practices to help your land is probably something that we really need to think about. And thank you for letting me join you all.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would be so cool if there was a reseeding project. It's like what you're talking about. But then again, it's like, but then you need the precipitation to complement that. But wow, well, thank you so much for sharing all of that, Sadie. And we will have a conversation later in the month relating to grazing. We'll have one of your colleagues on with us then, possibly more than one. And that will be the last Wednesday of the month. And we're actually going to post soon. This is all part of a series for Earth Month, essentially, is what we're recognizing. And so we'll be posting that lineup on our Facebook group page soon, so you guys can kind of see what's coming in the next couple of weeks. But for now, thank you both so very much for joining and being part of this conversation. It was so wonderful. I loved learning and hearing all the great things you shared. And I hope our listeners enjoy that as well. So have a beautiful rest of your week. And we hope to continue this conversation with you. So go ahead and
Thank you. I'll go on now.
Thank you.
Ako na.